Hello, welcome to Confessions of a Frustrated Game Master. I am Robert, the narrator, and thanks for joining me for another episode of Confessions. Going to make this a quick episode of Confessions. Have a couple of GM tips that I wanted to talk about, something that I am using in my current Vampire Nations Cypher System game, and thought I'd just throw that out there for fellow game masters. So two things, one thing that I really like to do to kind of reinforce verisimilitude in my game. If you've been playing for any amount of time, you're aware of the issue of asking players for perception rolls. And they, of course, if you're asking for a perception roll, they know that there is something out there to be perceived. So all of them kind of get placed on alert. Even within the game world, the characters should not have an added level of alert, depending on what the circumstances are. So something that I like to do, and I'm pretty sure I got this from someone else many, many years ago. I don't think I came up with it myself, but if I did get it from someone else, I can't remember who the source was, but I'm pretty sure you've heard of this before. What I try to do to prevent from asking my players for perception rolls is I will, if the game allows, I'll have my players roll 10 perception rolls. And as I'm playing the game, I will go down the line checking off their roll so that they have no idea when there is something to be perceived. So I really used it to great effect during my Vampire Nation Cypher System game. One of my players was trying to shadow an NPC to a secret location, and I was checking off his perception rolls, and also I use those rolls for other things. For example, if the character does not know how well they did with something, for instance, if they're attempting to shadow someone, generally you don't know that you're not doing a good job at following someone until it's too late. So what I also like to do, I don't just use them for perception rolls. If the system allows, I'll also use them for other types of rolls. In the Cypher system, it's a straight D20 roll, and you don't have to add any modifiers, but characters do have skills, and I'll have notes as to whether or not the character has an appropriate skill for the tasks that I'm secretly marking off. I'll just use those. So in this circumstance, I was using the character's roll for his stealth rolls, because if he failed at a stealth roll, the character really usually doesn't have a really good idea as to whether or not they failed following someone until it's too late. And I've used it, of course, for the original purpose, their perception rolls. So the character successfully, or the player character successfully follows the NPC to this secret location. The NPC disappears inside of a cave, and the PC is observing the location, and then all of a sudden I tell the PC that he has the spear of a tip. I'm sorry, spear of a tip. The tip of a spear at the back of his neck. It was very dramatic. It almost made you feel like you were watching a movie. The character and the player had no idea that they had failed their stealth roll, and the guards outside of this secret location saw him, were able to sneak up on him. The player character had no idea that he had failed his perception roll to see the guards sneaking up on him. And so he was taken by surprise. It was a really awesome scene, and it really adds verisimilitude to the situation. So what I recommend, my GM tip is, if at all possible, if the system allows, have your players make 10 rolls and you use them for perception rolls if the system allows. I also use them for any circumstance where the character should not know right offhand if they succeeded or failed. For instance, when they're interacting with NPCs and they're trying to determine if the NPC is lying or telling the truth, I'll secretly mark it off and I'll let the player know what the character thinks, and they have no idea if they succeeded or failed. So I think it adds a lot of verisimilitude to the game. What do you think about that GM tip? I'm sure you've heard of it before. Does that add to the game? Does that reinforce verisimilitude, or are there better ways to do that? Or are you playing a game where verisimilitude or what the player knows and the character knows shouldn't be separated? What do you think about that? Something that I did with a game that I am working on is I have a game that I'm working on that has static defenses, dodge, parry, social defense, and so forth. And I have what's called an illusion defense, Elusion. And it's basically the character's defense against being surprised or being ambushed. So it's a static defense. So I never, in that game, I never have to ask for perception rolls, because whenever an NPC is trying to sneak up on the character, the NPC, I roll behind the screen, and the player has no idea why I am rolling, and I go against the static, their defense, basically their perception when the NPC is trying to surprise them or ambush them and they have no idea. So I love keeping the player as close to the character as far as what they know, what information they have and shouldn't have. And I think it makes the game a lot more cinematic and a lot more dramatic if you do it that way. Something else that I like to do, which is not really a GM tip, but sometimes I like to surprise my players when it comes to other information in the game that they would normally know, but their character would not. For example, whenever I get the opportunity, if I'm introducing a new player character into the game, for instance, if a new player is joining the group, or if someone is bringing a new character into the game because their prior character died, what I like to do, because I think that when the players know that a particular character is actually supposed to be with the party, I think that the players do things, say things, and act in ways that aren't completely genuine for the character. So, for instance, when I'm introducing a new PC into the party, they accept things from that PC that they would never accept from an NPC. So whenever this is allowed, depending on the circumstances, what I like to do is I like to have the player who's bringing the new character in play an NPC, and I play the new player character as an NPC myself. So essentially what that does is the other players in the game think that the character that the new player is playing is his character, but it really is the character that I'm playing. So you get a more genuine reaction from the player characters. And sometimes what I'll do is I won't even allow the player who's bringing the new character in to play a character. What I will do is I will introduce his character as an NPC, have the players genuinely respond to the character the way they would respond to an NPC, and that at a certain point, I'll say, okay, take your character over, so that the other players in the game don't know that this NPC is actually the new party member. So that's something that I do also to reinforce verisimilitude. I really find that fun, and I love surprising my players and maybe throwing them for a loop, or maybe catching them on their heels. So what do you think about those ideas? What do you do, if anything, to add verisimilitude to your game, to kind of work around situations where the player doesn't pick up on things that the player character shouldn't know, like it's time to perceive something, or hey, you know that this guy that you're randomly running into, who is supposed to be a part of the party, is actually the player character. So thanks for checking out this quick episode of Confessions of a Frustrated Game Master. Just wanted to throw that one tip out and my other crazy idea. And yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever and whenever you're watching this. Thanks.